The Oil Region Alliance, for those of you that don't know, is one of the main stewards, the main legal steward of the Oil Region National Heritage Area. And in a way, the Oil Region Alliance is kind of like an octopus. It has its tentacles into everything that goes on up here. And while as menacing as that metaphor is, actually, I think they do a fantastic job in dealing with some really, really tough issues and coordinating with other nonprofits in the area. So I'm really happy that Abby's one of my favorite contact with Aura, because she, A, always has something to say, and B, often disagrees with me on things, but in a polite way, which is awfully nice. So I'm going to turn it over to Abby. She has a nice presentation for you that's Oil City specific. If you ever wanted to know about what's going on here, I think Abby's the person to talk to. Over to you.
Well, I'll say that there's some Titusville in there too this time.
Exactly.
Snuck it in. I'm Abby Popescu. I'm the Heritage Program Manager at the Oil Region Alliance. The Oil Region Alliance is a rural development hub organization whose pillars are heritage interpretation and preservation. We manage, like Andrew said, the federally funded and state-funded Oil Region National Heritage Area. We do outdoor recreation development, tourism promotion, and economic revitalization. All of these facets of the organization, though, happen to become interwoven in one arena, which is historic building preservation. Challenges facing historic structures of the oil region include funding difficulties, lack of vision or finding creative uses for the buildings, population decline and the resizing of our cities, absentee landlords, which is a really significant one in Oil City, which leads to, of course, advanced building deterioration. Many efforts have been made towards building preservation here in the oil region over several decades, starting with the establishment of National Register Historic Districts, first in Titusville and Franklin in the 80s, and then later in Oil City and Emlenton in the 90s. That led then to the creation of design guidelines here in the last decade. Titusville was first with creating this well-known design guide for historic structures and features, and then Oil City followed with a well-applauded design guideline that's sort of known in the state. Franklin has had a long-standing established historic architectural review board. And there are now facade granting programs in Titusville, Oil City, and just this year, Franklin as well. So Titusville had an early facade program that came as a result of a fire on the Chase Stewart block that almost destroyed this very historic oil boom era block of the city. So that was about 10 years ago. So Titusville has had 9 years of facade grant success. There were donors that stepped up to form a foundation, the Greater Titusville Development Foundation, and the foundation has been granting money ever since. So I have a slide here. This is before the facade funds were issued. This is the historic Diamond Street block. And then after 9 years, you can see a vast improvement. Although there is a missing building there, this was a contiguous block, and we had been warning about an absentee landlord who had a couple of buildings on this block. And indeed, the large building there did catch fire, and is now, the city was able to get funding to tear it down, and they've created a park, which is sort of the best option for the space, though we're sad that we have a missing building there. So since its inception, the Greater Titusville Development Foundation has awarded 46 facade grants totaling $250,000, leading to $637,500 of improvements to our downtown. Titusville's facade program is now funded through the Main Street Matters program through the Department of the Community and Economic Development, as is Oil City's. And Oil City just garnered a very large sum of money, $100,000, for their facade program. So we're really looking forward to seeing some of the changes, improvements that we've seen in Titusville coming up here in Oil City. Traditional approaches to structural stabilization of large commercial buildings in the Oil Region National Heritage Area have predominantly been focused on the ownership and subsequent redevelopment by a nonprofit, a municipal redevelopment authority, or an economic development agency. These redevelopment projects rely heavily on state and federal grant funding. So the Oil Region Alliance has acquired, over the course of several years, we have the Downs building, which you can see right across the park here, the brick building, the light brick building. Over the course of more than a decade, we've patched together money to complete the Central Avenue storefront, upgrade the HVAC, basement and roof rehabilitation, and that was completed with funding from PNC Charitable Trust, NPS, and the PADCNR. But just this year, we've successfully been awarded $800,000 to entirely finish the renovation of the building through the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Authority's Community Revitalization Grant. That's going to allow us to complete the Sycamore Street facade, a stock room, and 4 residential units on the upper floors. The Oil Region Alliance has several buildings in this view now. So we have the Downs building, we have the brick building, the Levi building here, and then we have another building that we've just acquired, the Yellow Dog building behind it. But organizations such as the Oil Region Alliance and the Venango County Economic Development Authority, who is doing the large bank building project over here, these projects are a start, but they can be halting and take a long time to complete while patching together these traditional funding sources. As we will see, there's not a lot of time left to rescue the many more large historic buildings we have in the Oil Region National Heritage Area, which are central to our story of the early history of the oil industry. The greatest barrier to redeveloping the commercial downtowns of the oil region is absentee landlords who buy buildings to leverage without any sort of eye to actually redeveloping or putting these buildings back in any sort of use for the benefit of the community. Oil City has several buildings owned by an absentee landlord, and likewise in Titusville, as I have noted, we had the building that caught fire, and then this building as well, owned by the same absentee landlord on the historic Diamond Block. This building, though, has been acquired by the Titusville Redevelopment Authority. It was purchased for $1 from the absentee landlord in August 2024, and then community development block grant money has been committed toward that building's rehabilitation into a mixed-use commercial storefront and upper-story residential development. But there are plenty of extremely large commercial building spaces that do not necessarily have a plan for rehabilitation. The Oddfellows building is one of them, and unfortunately, the building has been condemned, and the city of Oil City has filed for eminent domain of this historic building and is seeking to tear it down to create a parking lot. Again, this is one of those disruptions of the historic streetscape that result in that gap-toothed look that really takes away from the historical nature of our streets. It's not ideal. Another commercial building, very large, owned by an absentee landlord, is 202 Center Street in Oil City. This was the former Grandview Estates building. Another huge, massive space, completely disused and falling into utter disrepair. Lastly, we have the building that we are sitting in, which is the National Transit Building. And we're trying to solve the question, how do we adaptively reuse this building? There's 35,000 square feet, 7,000 square feet per floor in this building alone. The annex that is attached to this building is 30,000 square feet. Total of 65,000 square feet to fill and use. Currently, we have second floor artist studios that are very successful, but they're running at a nonprofit rate. And then commercial office space which has varied occupancy. We've lost several tenants in the last year or two. That has resulted in the entire fourth floor currently available for rent, as well as space on other floors and in the annex. The Oil City Civic Center is a nonprofit which manages this building, and I'm on their board. And this nonprofit was solely created to keep the building from falling into disrepair, or worse, into the wrong hands. But as I've said, major fiscal challenges face this building this year. So what do we do with all of this massive historic built space that has lost its usefulness? If it's not feasible for the community to fill all of these spaces with residential housing and storefronts, then what's the alternative? Is the implementation of data centers in these large spaces a possibility, as Andrew suggested, in order to preserve the historic, at least preserve the historic exterior shell of the buildings? There are some net positives to this idea. Sustainability, so a decreased carbon footprint by reusing embodied carbon in the original construction rather than expending more carbon in a new land development. The building would become rehabilitated rather than demolished. It would preserve the historic streetscape, generate jobs and tax revenue, and perhaps we could use our natural gas power infrastructure, though there's clearly some questions about that. And then there's the potential for data center infrastructure to attract businesses for relocation here. So, and then there's the questions to grapple with, the downsides of the data centers in the Oil Region National Heritage Area. The usual sort of negatives of increase in air pollution, noise pollution, possible increase in local consumer energy costs, perhaps an effect on water availability and quality. I do have some good news to share, though. As a catalyst for investment in saving these buildings, no matter what we do with them, the Oil Region Alliance has just received the Paul Brune Historic Revitalization Grant, which is a sub-grant program in which the Oil Region Alliance will administer granting out money to eligible applicants for historic building rehabilitation projects. This will be the first of what we hope will be more than one round of historic revitalization grants that we can offer to spur investors in these historic buildings in the commercial downtowns of the Oil Region National Heritage Area. Any questions, comments?
No? Oh, there we go. Okay. Excellent presentation, Abby. You did a great sort of tour de force there of sort of everything. And by the way, you know, you were actually pretty judicious. There are many, many other buildings that are in similar shape, including the one across the street, and a number of others. So in doing this, in the project and so on, when I walk down Seneca Street and I see these old buildings, absentee landlords, I see plywood all over the front of these buildings. What's stopping, just at a bare minimum, you talked about redoing the sort of facades and so on, or what's stopping the community at a minimum just going up and painting that exposed wood just in order to make it even more marketable or to attract more investment or in terms of grants and so on? Is there anything stopping that?
I mean, I guess, trespassing and things like that.
Has that ever been attempted?
But I'll share a little anecdote. In Titusville, actually, we had a little coffee shop at one point on the end of the Diamond Street. And it was owned by artists, and they had painted a wonderful mural above it. And the building that I showed in Titusville that the Redevelopment Authority has just gotten, that brick building, they actually ended up going and painting the plywood there. And I don't know if they had permission or not, but they did it. So these things do happen in communities, when there's really excited, interested people there.
Anyone else have a question? Steve.
You gave me the microphone, so I'm going to ask two questions. First is steps that you have in place or can enact to address the absentee landlord problem.
Well, it's a difficult one. Sort of enforcing zoning is the first step. And so the city of Oil City and also the city of Titusville have condemned those buildings. And that's a step to spur on whatever's going to happen next.
So that's your principal tool then, would be condemnation, right? And then force some action on the landlord.
Yeah, because of course the absentee landlords are not responsive to negotiation.
And second then, if I can, and I realize the cart is way in front of the proverbial horse with this one, but has there ever been any thought to even reconstruction of certain old historic buildings? And I think to Titusville, I grew up in Titusville. I remember the Penn Theater, okay, which was just this gorgeous theater front. I saw my first movie there, Gentle Ben, if anyone ever remembers that movie, okay, when I was a little kid, okay, and that was torn down long ago to make a throughway to the Burger King.
Yep.
So just any thoughts on that and even bringing back history that way?
I think reconstruction is difficult to think about when we've got these empty commercial buildings that we need to fill to save. But I think reconstruction is also a really compelling idea if there were money and funding. And I would say that there's not a lot of funding available for that, though we were able to reconstruct the cupola and the Tarbell House, so.
Honestly,
Yeah.
we're looking at where we were just 10 years ago. We were in a place where these same buildings were empty, most of them, or close to it, but we had other buildings that were empty too. It sounds like cliche, but really in each one of these towns, it is something that it's how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time, and it takes quite a bit of time. In the bank building over here, it's been about $16 million in federal and state funds, and we've had individual investment from the restaurant owner of about $600,000. We've had investment, so private, state, federal, but you're starting from scratch. I mean, these buildings are literally condemnable. So having that original investment just in this time, the Cata building where there is a big parking lot, but behind that was built new, and that was a federal and state investment. It led to having some grant money to do this building down here, or this building and the bank building, which you're all going to see and enjoy. But it's also playing catch up, because then, meanwhile, while we're doing this building is falling into disrepair, not completely, but still it needs some serious investment to be maintained. But even though it seems like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, it's still a step forward with each one of these things over time. But we did hit a rock bottom, honestly. I think the rock bottom's long behind us, but it can look daunting if you're just looking at it from the big picture. And I want to say, I'm going to name names here. We keep talking about absentee landlords with an S. The ones in Oil City, there is one absentee landlord, and he came in during COVID and bought a whole bunch of buildings that were already empty. His name is Milan, and the city has been citing him. They've had charges pressed against him. He fights it in court, and most of the time he wins. That's what's led to the condemnation and, I guess, eminent domain of the building down here, the Oddfellows building, which luckily it's historic in that it's old, but it doesn't have the history that, say, the National Transit Building has and the Exchange has. I don't know if that answered, but I felt like I had to talk a little bit about what has been being done.
Yeah, and there is a process, right, of prioritizing your buildings. So that, I think the National Transit Building certainly should be a priority, and we're having a hard time. It is a priority, but having a hard time getting there to putting the pieces together to ultimately make it savable.
Oh, and I didn't even mention there has been some reinvestment now from the private sector, and we've seen that with the purchase of the PNC Bank building, which is being used for office space, the purchase of the land where the old Holiday Inn Hotel was torn down, and there's going to be a $5 to $12 million private investment into that to build an event space and restaurant as well as a hotel eventually.
So just to add on to that, you sort of got into that. So this is, as I said, arguably the most historic building in Oil City. Arguably, obviously, depends on how you look at it. In terms of the original structure, this was literally Standard Oil's headquarters in this region, right? That gave birth to the entire energy industry and so on, in one way or shape or form. The Seven Sisters, everything. So, have you ever been, or to what degree it has the private sector that Sam mentioned? Are they involved at all in providing grants, private grants to this area, or are they overwhelmingly public or federal or state? Do you have private foundations that were previously set up by energy companies involved, or any other energy players who look at this property, see its historic value, and want to work together to salvage it?
Yeah, I would say that we definitely have foundations that are helping us out through PNC Charitable Trust is the most recent one that I can think of. I don't know if Emily, do you have any other?
PNC Charitable Trust, Phillips Trust are
Yeah, Phillips.
from donors in the area, but not from the energy sector.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, Phillips
exactly.
Trust is a trust built by Phillips.
Right.
Its fundamental money was energy.
But yeah, we wouldn't say that the major players in the energy sector today are giving back money or forming foundations to help save this place. Yeah.
Okay.
In regard to Milan Adamovsky, I talked to Struzzi, Jim Struzzi. I just call him Struzzi. But anyway, Milan has also purchased several buildings in Indiana, PA, and so I walked out to make sure I found out whatever progress was made. Of the 3 buildings he has purchased, 2 have been totally neglected. He has had some work on one of the buildings. It's also been brought to my attention that he's approached Bradford as well and acquired some. So if you hear of him trying to find and acquire any building in your respective communities, stay clear of him. Many of our building owners did succumb. They had terms of agreement. A couple have been purchased with cash, but it's not a good situation. And as I was saying to Jim, you come through our town at night and it's very dark because the buildings are all abandoned and, as everyone says, falling in disrepair. So make sure he doesn't acquire anything in any other place.
That's pretty straightforward. Anybody else questions? Yeah, comment.
Story, and I think Sam could talk about it, the Lyric Theater renovation.
Well, the Lyric Theater, we had 3, or we actually had many theaters in Oil City back in its heyday and its boom time. And the Drake Theater was one of them that was torn down, and it was 2,000 some square feet, or 2,000 some seats on this side of town. It was torn down at least for the reason of expansion of Webco, which is a major employer in town. And then we had the Latonia Theater. We have the Latonia Theater on the south side. But the Lyric Theater is a small theater 2 doors down from us here, 2 buildings down beside the Oddfellows building. And it's been the kind of dream of the Oil City Community Playhouse, which is they make small theater productions and things in the area. You'll see them tonight actually at dinner. They're performing an original production over there for everyone's entertainment. But they've been looking for a home for 30 years or more. And the Lyric Theater, which most people didn't even know about, is an old vaudeville theater that was covered up by a men's clothing store for many decades, Rail Way. I still have some jackets from there. But they had, there was a theater in the back of it. Most people didn't even know about it. It had almost been lost to history. But you go into it, and it looks like a theater out of like an old saloon in the old westerns when, there's cabaret dancers and whatnot. It's really neat. Still has some of its original plasterwork and painting. And the Community Playhouse has purchased the theater and has raised nearly $2 million to rehab it and restore it through grants and private funding and a whole lot of work from Kay Woods. I don't know if she even knew what the project was when she started doing the Karma concert series, which was great for revitalizing downtown in and of itself. Just having musicians come down and bands come down and play either in Town Square or over at Billy's, which is a local eating and drinking establishment. And that's raised a whole lot of money, and actually I think even more raised awareness about it, because this project for the Lyric had basically set idling for 20 years while the Community Playhouse was raising what it could, but really wasn't doing a lot of work towards it. And that awareness brought by the Karma concert series has fast-tracked it, which is still slow when you're working with government grants, but we're looking to have it done. We have the architectural drawings rendered, we have the engineers hired, and they should be starting construction on that. So hopefully, the last 4 years we've been saying, hey, just wait, there's going to be a restaurant in the building next door. Well, now finally there's a restaurant in the building next door. And I think by next year there will be another event space, and in 2 years there will probably be a hotel and a theater over at the Lyric. So keep coming.
That's great. Any other questions? One quick add-on to what you just said, and we mentioned earlier, it's not just even sites that we have knocked down. Aura just purchased and knocked down earlier, 2 years ago, or was it a year ago, the former Holiday Inn, Days Inn property. It's then been sold to our friend, my classmate Nate Neely. Here, he made private sector investment. He's going to be putting in an entertainment and I think some hotel space as well, although those plans are still being developed. Right, so you first come to the entertainment venue, then you come to the hotel. It's going to be great for all the Airbnbs here. But what I really like about Nate is that an earlier rendition of it had a very modern design that wasn't quite something out of Las Vegas, but it was something quite modern. Nate, and I think others who grew up here, he was very receptive when a number of us, myself, Sam, and others, talked with him about what that site originally was. It wasn't the Holiday Inn, that was the old rail yard in Union Station. And he's run with that idea in terms of its facade. Now, what that's going to look like in the end is up to him. But what I really liked about it was that he saw value in creating a historically relevant place and recreating it, right, in that former image. And I think that's one of the challenges with Oil City that I see, that zoning over time, particularly as concerns facades, Franklin's a beautiful town because they enforce their zoning. It's very easy, right? The facades match. They're not all built at the same time, but it's a beautiful old town. Oil City, you can have this building next to it, that one, and then you have some gray brick here over where the state store is. There really wasn't that master plan, and trying to avoid these tooth gaps, you call them, is that right? Yeah, it's going to be, I think, and my last question to you, Abby, is, so you mentioned the Oddfellows building. We've been talking about that, right? it seems like it's probably coming down. Is there a way to maintain that facade at the same time that you could have a park or parking in back of it? I mean, is that something within the realm of the possible to avoid that missing tooth?
Yeah, I think that that's a possibility, though, an engineer would tell you better.
Right.
But certainly, yeah, we've seen maintaining of a facade like that before. And yeah, so there's creative options to that site. I'd like to see Oil City go that route. But again, the cost will be the thing that matters. So.
Right.
I saw an interesting thing recently. If we're just talking here, I don't know if anyone cares about this, but speaking to Franklin, right now they're looking at one of the houses downtown on Liberty Street in their main thoroughfare. That's a beautiful Victorian. One of the only examples of that exact style, I think Elizabethan too, I don't know, something. It's a Victorian house, and it's fallen into horrible disrepair. It's a private owner. They've agreed tentatively to sell it for $1 to the redevelopment authority, and they're going to see if they can, if they can restore it. But if they can't, they'll tear it down. But there will be one of the renderings they had was of what's called a pocket park, which is just a little space, but then doing almost like a replica of the house, smaller version that's still something that you can, it's good for taking pictures around, like, if you're there for homecoming pictures and stuff, it'll look nice and it won't be an eyesore. So there's some options like that.
Titusville did a little bit of that with their Founders Park when the building burned. If I can find the photo. But they maintained at least one little portion of the building that burned. I don't know.
I'd say one other thing too that.
Oh. So that there is what they've kept from
They kept the archway.
from the fire. Yeah, and I don't know how they're still figuring out how to stabilize that and make it usable, I think, but at least they kept that relic from the building. I think that's a goal.
Great. Well, Abby, let's give Abby a round of applause, everybody. Great job. Lots more to talk about on this subject. It's a sore point for many of us who grew up here, right? Franklin just had their Apple Fest, which started out as a pie eating contest, and now it's, what I hear right, it's the largest celebration in the Northeast or something, I don't know, some unbelievable statistic, right? And I remember Oil Heritage Week when I was a kid was incredibly vibrant, was a whole week, and we had historical activities and lectures and so on. And so I think what we're talking about here somehow plugs into the way we celebrate our history in this town, right? And I think Franklin actually has a lot to teach us in that regard, because they really took something that could be anywhere in the US, a beautiful old town, and really made it into something special that draws people in from everywhere. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And now we will go down the street. You'll go past the Oddfellows building. You'll be able to, hopefully nothing will hit you as you go by. And that's not a joke. And then we'll be going down to the Venango Museum of Art, Science, and Industry, the former post office, which has an unbelievably cool and creative design, and is particularly dedicated to Oil City, the world's first oil port. So we'll see you all down there. Thanks very much.